Newly elected British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has had a tough first 100 days in office. He's been under fire for accepting free tickets to a Taylor Swift concert. His top aide has been replaced. His approval ratings are falling. And who could forget his gaffe last month when he'd referred to some Israeli hostages in Gaza as sausages? A key priority for Starmer is attracting foreign investment. And this week, a group of cashed-up global superannuation and pension funds, led by the Aussie firm IFM, presented a blueprint to UK policymakers calling for regulatory changes. IFM is owned by a group of 17 Australian industry super funds, and I spoke to its head of external relations, David Whiteley.
That £10 billion is a commitment, was an indication of our commitment to the British economy and the opportunities here in the UK, particularly around the energy transition. We've made a number of investments, particularly through existing infrastructure investments we have here in the United Kingdom. What this blueprint is about is then the further how to further operationalise that MOU that we've got with the British government.
Yeah, is the UK a pretty attractive place for you and other pension funds to invest, or are there still some pretty big barriers there?
Well, there's obviously very strong trade, investment and cultural ties between Australia and the United Kingdom. From an IFM perspective, we've had an office here now for close to 15 years. We've got over 60 investment professionals working here. We have quite a significant infrastructure footprint and a number of British pension fund clients. So from our perspective, the UK economy is one which we are already heavily invested in. Other industry super funds are too. What we do see with the energy transition in particular, though, is a government which has very ambitious energy transition targets. So therefore, some quite significant opportunities for us.
Yeah, you've developed a policy blueprint for the UK, which you launched earlier this week. Who signed up for it and what are you hoping to get out of it?
So we've got 6 major industry super funds. We've got then 5 major British pension funds that have signed up. In total, that's around about $3.5 trillion worth of workers' retirement savings. It represents around about 40 million workers, so 30 million here in the United Kingdom and 10 million in Australia. It's the first of its kind that I'm aware of. And what it demonstrates is that industry super funds are doing 3 things. Firstly, they're scouring the world to try and find the best investments they can for their members. Secondly, there's a preparedness to work with global pension funds who are like-minded investors. In particular, they work on the basis of running only to profit their members. They invest in the very long term. And thirdly, a preparedness to collaborate and work with governments too, to identify what policy settings will facilitate investment from Australian industry super funds, particularly in where there's huge opportunities like the energy transition.
Yeah, how significant a moment is this then to have all these various pension funds uniting basically to lobby the British government?
As I said, it's a first and it is significant. It shows a number of things. Firstly, it just shows the success story that the superannuation sector now is. Superannuation is fast becoming, if not already, a key part of Australia's economic diplomacy. The discussions we had yesterday with policymakers here in the UK demonstrate something similar to what we see around the world, which is governments that tend to look at Australia's super system and there's often a sense of regret that they didn't have the foresight the Australian Parliament had in the 1980s to set the system up. That's the first element. The second element, the piece around collaboration with British pension funds is really significant. It's a demonstration that pension funds, super funds from around the world see working together and working to invest in the very long term as a significant priority for them.
I read an article this week basically saying the United Kingdom treats public investment in infrastructure as a liability on its assets sheet. So what does that mean for you and for IFM when it comes to investing money in the UK?
So it's probably probably one of the centrepiece recommendations that we're making, which is rather than just treat a financial stake that the government may take in infrastructure, including in the energy transition, they also treat that financial stake as an asset as well. What this will do is free up their ability to invest more in the energy transition, and what that will do is, we believe, will crowd in more private finance, particularly long-term investors like industry super funds, like IFM Investors, and like British pension funds.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is approaching 100 days in office. Has the Labor Party coming to power really been the main reason why you've launched this new blueprint?
Not really, no. We'd already signed the MOU with the previous Conservative government. Within the British context, there's broadly bipartisan support and recognition of the importance of achieving the energy transition. They've got some very strong and ambitious targets to achieve. What we have with an incoming Labor government, of course, is an opportunity to speak with the new government. They're setting their own priorities. They're putting in place new institutions such as Great British Energy and the National Wealth Fund in order to focus on the energy transition. And as often is the case with new governments, we felt it was a great opportunity for us to work very closely with them to see what investment opportunities there would be for industry super funds, for IFM, and ultimately, of course, for millions of working Australians.
Yeah, you mentioned opportunities. You've mentioned energy transition quite a few times. Is that really the key here for the UK market?
I think it's when you look at what the world needs in terms of the engineering feat, the technology feat, and the amount of capital that is going to be required to achieve the energy transition. What we're seeing in any jurisdiction, quite frankly, is the energy transition and housing are typically the two key major investment priorities of governments. So from our perspective, quite clearly, it represents a huge investment opportunity for us. We know it's a priority for British pension funds. We know it's a priority for the British government. And that's why we pulled together this blueprint.
Okay, then taking a step back more broadly, the outlook for investment globally, how do you see things right now?
Well, there's huge opportunities out there, of course. What we are seeing is a fair degree of geopolitical risk. We're seeing a fair degree of increased trade and investment between allied countries. So again, the UK falls into that, of course, with being a very strong ally of Australia. They're two of the key trends. There's obviously opportunities, as we've seen, around decarbonisation, but there's opportunities around digitisation too. So the investment outlook for long-term investors, such as IFM, such as industry super funds, from our perspective, is quite positive. But we do recognise there's significant geopolitical risk at the moment.
Yeah, you mentioned geopolitical risk. What about the upcoming US presidential election? Is that going to have any major impact on any investment decisions you might make, depending on who potentially wins?
Well, obviously, under the Biden administration, they introduced the Inflation Reduction Act. That's been a huge investment opportunity for investors globally. We've, again, had a very significant presence in the United States now for more than a decade. We've worked closely with both Republican and Democrat governments. And irrespective of who's elected in the US, we would anticipate we'd continue to see the US as a very attractive investment market for us. And we would work with whichever government is elected at federal level.
All right, so you've launched the Blueprint policy earlier this week. I mean, how positive are you feeling about the next 6 to 12 months?
I look incredibly positive. As I said, the reception that we've received from major British pension funds. So these are funds which, of course, would invest alongside IFM and invest alongside industry super funds has been very positive. The reception we're receiving from the British government's been very positive. They're holding an international investment summit next Monday. IFM will be represented there by our chair. So we're very positive about the outlook here in the UK over the next 6, 12 months and beyond that.
David Whiteley from IFM, thanks for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Ed.